Hello, people of the internet. Lee Spinell here, and today I'll be discussing the Elven races of the Elder Scrolls franchise. You may hear my AC going on and off throughout this video, just pay it no mind. We'll be starting with the Aldmer, aka the Altregai. Their name means first folk or elder folk in Aldmeris. They were thin and tall, averaging around 6 feet with sharp features. Supposedly, the Altmer are the closest living relatives to the Aldmer, which suggests that the Aldmer probably had gold skin and eyes. They were the first race of elves on Nirn, and they were descended from the old Elnafey on Aldmeris. They sailed from Aldmeris to Tamriel, first settling on the Somerset Isles before expanding across the continent. In terms of culture, they were said to be similar to traditional Altmer, and they spoke Aldmeris. The Aldmer eventually evolved into the many races of elves across Nirn, and no longer exist. Following that, we have the Altmer, aka the High Elves, or the Salache. Their name means cultured people in Aldmeris. Like the Aldmer, they are around 6 feet tall and are the tallest surviving elven race. They typically have gold skin and amber eyes, but those with human ancestry may have lighter or darker skin, as well as blue or green eyes. They typically have white, blonde, or red hair, and live 2 to 3 times longer than humans. The Altmer are known to be naturally gifted in magic. The Altmer descended from the Aldmer of the Somerset Isles, and claim to have stayed the most faithful to Aldmeri tradition out of all the elven races, even continuing to speak Aldmeris. They are a very proud people with a highly sophisticated society and complex social hierarchy. They believe that they are descended from the Aedra and worship them as their ancestors. The Altmer have been very influential across Tamriel's history, and the culture and language of the Cyrodiilic Empire are based on Aldmeris and Altmeri tradition. During the settling of the Somerset Isles, the Altmer fought with the Slodes of Thras for control and hunted down many of the dangerous native animals of Somerset, such as the Welwa, to extinction. In the First Era, the Durrani clan of Altmer left Somerset for High Rock, where they procreated with the local needs to create the Bretons. In the Second Era, the First Aldmeri Dominion was formed between Somerset, Valenwood, and Elsewhere during the Three Banners War, but ultimately fell. Later in the era, the Second Aldmeri Dominion was formed with the addition of the Maomer, which was then destroyed by Tiber Septim, aka Talos. After the Oblivion Crisis in the Third Era, a group of Altmer supremacists took control of Somerset and formed the Third Aldmeri Dominion with Valenwood and Elsewhere. They led the fight against the Empire during the Great War, which ended with the signing of the White Gold Concordant, which banned Talos worship. Up next, we have the Aelids, aka the Heartland High Elves, Wild Elves, or Saliache. Much like their close relatives the Altmer, the Aelids averaged around 6 feet in height. They were tan and had white or blue eyes, which may suggest that light eyes were also a trait of the Aldmer. They descended from the Aldmer, who left the Somerset Isles for the mainland of Tamriel and settled mainly in Cyrodiil. They had a large, highly advanced empire divided into many kingdoms, and their magical and technological prowess rivaled the power of even the Dwemer. They spoke Aeliadun and worshipped Daedra, with different kingdoms favoring different Daedric princes, although some groups, such as the Barsabic Aelids of Blackmarsh, worshipped the Aedra. They were known to enslave other races, including Needs, goblins, and beastfolk. The Aeliad Empire was destroyed in the First Era by the Alessian Slave Rebellion, which was assisted by rebel Aeliad kings. Many of the surviving Aelids left Cyrodiil and were either absorbed into the Elvid populations of Valenwood and High Rock or eventually died out. One of the Aeliad kings who assisted the Alessian Slave Rebellion, Lelorarin Dinar, was trapped in Cold Harbor for centuries, making him the last living Aeliad until the Second Era, when he died helping to stop the Flame Elves. Bosmer, aka Wood Elves or Boiche, means green people, forest people, or tree-sap people in Aldmeris. They are the shortest elven race, shorter than humans, with females being taller than males. Due to their small size, they are the most agile elven race. They have a wide range of skin tones and eye color and tend to have darker hair in shades of brown, red, and black. They are said to have star-like pupils, and some may have horns, although very rarely are these horns real. Some Bosmer also file their teeth to points. They have a strong connection to the forests of Valenwood, which allow them to hide in plain sight and command the simple creatures of the forest. Like many of the other elven races, Bosmer live 2 to 3 times as long as humans. The Bosmer descend from the Aldmer, who left the Somerset Isles and settled in Valenwood. They speak Bos, and unlike most of the other elven races, they tend to prefer a more natural, simplistic life. They value diversity in their society and tend to be accepting of most differences. Most Bosmer follow the Green Pact, a religious pact from their main god Y'ffre, which forbids them from harming the plants of Valenwood. Tribal Bosmer tend to be more traditional than those who live in cities, and may also practice the more obscure parts of the Green Pact, such as cannibalizing their dead. Other important figures in Bosmeri culture include the Silvenar and the Green Lady, who represent the spiritual and physical halves of the Bosmer, respectively. Due to the Green Pact, the Bosmer are unable to harvest wood, instead building their cities by manipulating the growth of Valenwood's grot oaks through magic. They use a lot of bones and fur in their decor and clothing, and are known for their use of bows over forged weapons. Most of early Bosmeri history is shrouded in mystery. According to legend, everything began as shapeless beings in the ooze, and Yifra gave all the creatures, including the Bosmer, their forms. Some beings escaped before being given a permanent form, becoming the changelings. These changelings, as well as the Bosmer who do not follow the Green Pact, are said to return to the ooze when they die. Another legend says that the Bosmer planted the first grot oaks from the perchance acorn, all of which could walk and sing. After the Alessian slave rebellion, an alien sorcerer named Anumeril turned the perchance acorn into a definite acorn and took away the tree's ability to walk. In the First Era, the Camoran dynasty began, the first wild hunt occurred, and Valenwood became part of the Second Empire following the Thracian Plague. In the Second Era, an influx of non-Green Pact Bosmer migrated back to Valenwood, causing a series of events culminating in the burning of the village New Joy, which led to the formation of the Black Sap movement to prevent Green Pact-related misunderstandings. Also in the Second Era, Valenwood joined the Aldmeri Dominion, and Eldenroot became its capital. In the Third Era, the Camoran usurper led an army of mercenaries and undead throughout Valenwood until his defeat 18 years later. After this, Valenwood became noticeably more isolationist. The Chimer are also known as the Changed Folk, Changed Ones, or Velothi. Their name means people of the north in Aldmeris. They were between the height of Aldmer and humans, with dull gold skin and bright yellow eyes. They were descended from the Aldmer who left the Somerset Isles to follow the prophet Veloth to Morrowind in order to worship the good Daedra, Azura, Boethia, and Mephala instead of the Aedra. They fought with the Aldmeri followers of Trinamac, who hoped to preserve the Aldmeri tradition of Aedra worship, and Boethia consumed Trinamac. The three good Daedra were then said to split up the Chimer, with Azura taking 1/3 to Morrowind, Mephala taking another third to the Black Marsh, where they would become the Cantamiric Velothi, and Boethia taking the final third to a land that drifted into the ocean, possibly Cathnocae. Chimer spoke Ald Chimerus, and originally structured their society similar to their Aldmeri ancestors, but they eventually split into tribes, which would later become the Dunmer Houses and Ashlander tribes after the Battle of Red Mountain. They conflicted with the Needs, Nords, Dwemer, and Orcs for most of their history. During the First Era, the Nords conquered Morrowind, and the Chimer and Dwemer joined forces to drive them back. After, the Chimer Lord Induril Nerevar forged the first council alliance with the Dwemer king Dumac. The discovery of the heart of Lorcan under Red Mountain led to the War of the First Council, which culminated in the disappearance of the Dwemer during the Battle of Red Mountain. Against the wishes of Azura, Almalexia, Sothasil, and Vivek used the heart to become living gods, and Azura cursed the Chimer, transforming them into the Dwemer. Next, we have the Dwemer, aka the Dwarves, Deep Elves, or Under Elves. Their name means Deep Folk in Aldmeris. They were as tall as humans and wore long beards. Known to be highly intelligent, industrious, and sometimes cruel, the Dwemer were descended from the Aldmer, who settled in Morrowind at some point before the Chimer arrived. They lived in clans, and their language, Dwemeris, varied from clan to clan. They built strongholds that extended deep underground, and they worshipped neither Aedra nor Daedra, instead attempting to harness the power of godhood through their highly advanced technology. Not much is known about early Dwemer history. They were said to have been given the name dwarves by giants, which may have meant the giants of Skyrim, but could also be referring to the Elnafey of Aldmeris. They fought with the Chimer over resources and religious beliefs until the conquering of Morrowind by the Nords, at which point the Dwemer and Chimer fought off the Nords together and formed the First Council Alliance. The Rorken clan self-exiled from the alliance, and their chieftain was said to have thrown his hammer, Voldendrung, across Tamriel, and the clan settled where it landed in what they called Volenfell, later Hammerfell. Clan Kragan followed in their footsteps, leaving Morrowind and settling in Skyrim, encouraging other clans to follow. After the Falmer were driven out of Skyrim by the Nords, the Dwemer took them in, blinding them with toxic fungus and enslaving them. The Falmer eventually rebelled in the War of the Crag, which lasted until the Dwemer disappeared during the Battle of Red Mountain. Yagrum Bagarn, who was in the Outer Realm during the battle, avoided the disappearance and is the last living Dwemer as of the Fourth Era, year 201. Next, we have the Falmer, which means Snow Elves in Aldmeris. The uncorrupted elves are typically referred to as Snow Elves, Ice Elves, or Ancient Falmer, while corrupted elves are typically referred to as Falmer, as well as Snow Ghosts, Vogels, Riker Kane, Fish People, Clatter, Coats, and the Betrayed. Ancient Falmer resembled Altmer with pale skin and hair and a resistance to cold. Modern Falmer are hunched and goblin-like with slits for nose, pale skin, black eyes, sharp ears, and a terrible scent. The ancient Falmer descended from Aldmer, who settled in Skyrim. They spoke Falmer and had a large, prosperous empire during the Merethic era. They seemed to worship Adria as they created the chantry of Auriel. They conflicted with the Outmorans, and during the late Merethic era, they attacked Sarthal during what would be the Night of Tears, and the only survivors were Ysgramor and his sons, who fled to Atmor. Ysgramor returned to Skyrim with the 500 companions and wiped out every elf they could find. The ancient Falmer managed to survive until the First Era, when they took refuge with the Dwemer who blinded and enslaved them. The Falmer eventually fought back in the War of the Crag until the disappearance of the Dwemer. The Falmer continued to live underground, especially in the caverns of Blackreach, coming up to the surface for raids. They live in tribes and typically wear little clothing. The Falmer eat mainly fish and mushrooms, but they may also cannibalize their captives. They also raise chars. Some Falmer avoided enslavement by the Dwemer and lived in hiding. The last two surviving ancient Falmer were Gelbor and Virthur, the latter of which became a vampire and was killed in the Fourth Era. The Maumar are also known as sea elves, tropical elves, Pandanians, and derogatorily fish elves. They are similar to the Altmer in height and build. They may have pearlescent white, gray, blue, or even colorless skin, and typically have pupilless pale blue or white eyes. They can filter salt water with their tongues, allowing them to drink while in the sea. Some Maumar have fin-like ears and some have gills. Maumar leviathans are Maumar who are part sea serpent. They are over 6 feet tall with scaly skin, and they stand hunched over, not used to moving on land. Maumar are descended from the Aldmer, who followed King Orgnum and rebelled against the powers of Aldmeris, and thus were exiled to Piandania, where they interbred with the beastfolk of the island. They speak Piandania and live in clans. They worship King Orgnum as the serpent god Sadikal, and they acknowledge the existence of other gods as well. They travel and fight mainly by sea, where they use storm magic and trained marine predators to their advantage. They have even tamed sea serpents with their magic. They have a strong dislike for the Altmer and have tried to capture the Somerset Isles throughout most of history, as well as the coastal regions of Elsewhere, Hammerfell, and Valenwood. They allied with the Altmer in the Second Almeri Dominion, and their last recorded attack on Somerset was in the Third Era during the War of the Isle. Orzamer, aka Orcs or Ornem, means cursed folk or pariah folk in Aldmeris. They are slightly shorter than Nords and may have gray or green skin. Their hair is often dark in shades of brown, red, and black, and their eyes may be a variety of colors, including red. They have smaller ears than the other elven races, and they also have tusks, and their blood has alchemical properties. They seem to have a similar lifespan to humans, but this could be due to their tradition of seeking death in battle before they become too old to fight. Orcs are descended from the Aldmeri followers of Trinimac, who attempted to stop the followers of Veloth and were transformed into the Orzamer when Boethia consumed Trinimac and turned him into Malakath. They were ostracized for most of their early history, being seen as cruel and uncultured brutes. However, they see themselves as simply stern people who value justice. They speak Orcish and live in many places across Tamriel, typically in tribes. Hrothgarian orcs live in the Hrothgarian Mountains between High Rock and Skyrim. Wood orcs live in Valenwood. Iron orcs, or Osh Ornim, live in the Dragontown Mountains of Craglorn, and mountain orcs, or Malak orcs, live in Marland. Orcs who have assimilated to other cultures are often called city orcs, as are the orcs of Orsinium. Most orcs worship Malakath, although some still worship Trinimac. Traditional Orcish tribes are controlled by a single chieftain and his multiple wives, each of which controls a specific aspect of tribal life. Orcs cremate their dead and are known to adhere to the burial traditions of their enemies after battle. Around the 9th or 10th century in the First Era, the first kingdom of Orsinium was founded in the Hrothgarian Mountains and was destroyed by a combination of Breton and Redguard forces. A second Orsinium was accepted into the Second Empire under Akaviri potentate Severian Korak, but was once again destroyed after the potentate's death. During the mid-Second Era, Orsinium once again rose as part of the Daggerfall Covenant. Another incarnation called Nova Orsinium was created in the Third Era and recognized by Emperor Uriel Septim VII. It was again destroyed by the Redguard and Breton forces in the early Fourth Era, and the Orc refugees were taken in by the Empire. Orsinium was later rebuilt in the mountains between Hammerfell and Skyrim. The Sinstral Elves, aka the Left-Handed Elves, Left-Handers, or Canurgai, were descended from the Aldmer, who left Aldmeris and settled on Yakuta. At their height, they had a massive empire across Yakuta. They spoke Sinstral and were known for their stonework and gem cutting. Unlike the Yakutans, the Sinstral elves did not believe in an afterlife. During the Merethic era, they were driven out by the Yakutans and fled to the and fled to the Sisters archipelago and the coast of Hammerfall, where they survived for a short time before once again being pursued and wiped out by the Yakutans. Our last elven race is the Dunmer, aka the Dark Elves, or Mariche. They are the same height as humans and have gray skin, which is especially susceptible to skin disease. They typically have red eyes, but may also have gray, brown, or black eyes. Their hair is typically brown, red, black, or white. Like most elves, the Dunmer live 2 to 3 times as long as humans, although Telvanni mages are known to greatly extend their lifespans through magic. They are descended from the Chimer, who were cursed by Azura. They are reserved and quick-tempered, and they are divided between the House Dunmer, who speak Dunmerus and worship the tribunal of living gods, Amalexia, Sothisil, and Vivek, and the Ashlander tribes, who speak Ashland and uphold Chimer traditions of worshipping the good Daedra. Both groups avoid the bad Daedra, Moloch Baal, Mehrunes Dagon, Sheogorath, and Malakath. They also practice ancestor worship. Dunmeri architecture is very different between the houses, from Telvanni mushroom towers to the crab-like buildings of the Veteran to the cubic Hlalu houses. Dunmer are also known for their craftsmanship with a variety of materials found in Morrowind, including volcanic glass, sea glass, chitin, and clay. Dunmer raise many of the native animals on Morrowind as pets and livestock, including multiple types of guar, netches, and insectoid animals like quama and nixox. They are also known to keep slaves until the Third Era. The Dunmer conflicted with the First and Second Cyrodiilic Empires, which resulted in the assassination of Emperor Riemann III by the Morag Tong. Both Akaviri potentates were also assassinated by the Morag Tong, starting the interregnum and outlawing the Morag Tong outside of Morrowind. After the collapse of the Second Empire, Dunmer enslavement of Argonians increased, slowing down after the Notten flu due to rumors of it being started by the Argonians. The Cantamiric Velothi were completely wiped out by the flu. Later in the Second Era, the Second Akaviri invasion, after failing to defeat the Nords, turned to Morrowind. The Nords followed and helped the Dunmer fight them off. They were joined by the Argonians, the invaders were driven back to the sea, and the Ebonheart Pact was formed. Argonian enslavement was outlawed, but House Telvanni refused to release their slaves and withdrew from the pact. Near the end of the Second Era, Dagoth-Ur awoke and released the Ashblade on Vardenfell. The tribunal focused all their attention on holding back Dagoth-Ur, which allowed for the Treaty of Armistice with the Third Empire. The Ashblade reached its worst during the Vardenfell crisis in the Third Era. Ships from Vardenfell were turned away from the mainland for fear of infection. The Ashblade killed crops, made the animals of Vardenfell crazy, and wiped out all of the Nix-Ox, Cliffstriders, and Vardvarks by the late Third Era. By the end of the Third Era, the Nerevarine released the heart of Lorkhan and defeated Dagoth-Ur. He then killed Amalexia after she killed Sothisil. Vivek disappeared, ending the tribunal. Without Vivek, Bardois fell into Vivek City, causing the Red Year and a migration of Dunmer away from Vardenfell.